Alright, so for today's vlog, we're going to be talking about some of the biggest mistakes buyers make and how to avoid them before you start your search. Alright, so I understand, trust me, I see it all the time. Buying a home is an exciting time. It's one of the biggest privileges we have, is to be able to help people with such a huge transaction. However, you must follow a systemized order to make sure you're not spinning your tires and that you don't end up frustrating yourself in the long run. All right, so the first step that you must do is make sure you get a mortgage pre-approval before you even start looking at a home. This is because you need a roadmap. You need to understand what is your goal, where are you heading. If you start looking for a home without getting a pre-approval or doing one of those online things where nobody really looks at your credit and things like that, it's going to give you a false value. And undoubtedly what's going to happen is you're going to see a home probably $100,000 or $150,000 more expensive than what you're actually going to get pre-approved for, and that's going to set an unrealistic benchmark, and you're going to compare every other home you see after you've got your pre-approval to that one. All right, so that's the first reason. And additionally, when you're looking at homes, and even though it doesn't happen very often, it still does happen once in a while, you get involved in a multiple offer situation. When you're involved in a multiple offer situation, usually the listing agent's going to ask for that approval in writing along with the offer, because they want to make sure that they're not wasting their time with somebody who's not actually going to be able to buy that property. So instead of you running around and getting all frustrated in the sense that you're trying to rush around and get a mortgage pre-approval in writing just for the fact so you can put the offer in, we get this all done ahead of time because we know we're going to have to do it eventually. So why not do it before you start looking for a home? All right, so when people call us and say, hey Jacob, I want to look at this house, I want to look at that house, we will not start the process until we know they've sat down with their mortgage rep, they've got a pre-approval in writing, and then we hit the ground running. All right, so that's the first thing. Secondly, a lot of people only consider the actual mortgage or the down payment as the operating cost, or what money they're gonna have to come up with when it comes to buying a home, and they don't consider all the hidden costs. All right, you've got, when you're buying, lawyer fee, land transfer tax, moving costs. I usually tell people to put aside 1% to 3% based on what they're buying to cover those costs. But in addition to that, once you've got your mortgage, you've given your down payment, it's not just your mortgage payment. You've got to cover property taxes, electricity, water, you got maintenance and upkeep. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's involved in home ownership as well. So make sure you're budgeting for that from the get-go. You do not want to be house poor, where you put all your money into the down payment and you just maxed out exactly what the bank told you could afford, and now you're stuck and you can't afford to do anything else. Okay? If the bank is qualifying you for a certain amount of money, I don't even recommend utilizing the entire amount. But it's your own finances, but make sure you completely understand it and are comfortable with it before you move forward with that. All right? The third biggest mistake home buyers make, and this is something that I've never done because I never advise, I will not allow my clients to do it, is buying a home without getting a home inspection. And now when I say I will not allow my clients to do it without a home inspection, I will put it in writing. If a client actually says, no, we don't need it, you're signing off, stating that Jacob has stated that he highly recommends you get a home inspection and you've decided not to do it. These days, that's actually a clause in the OREO forms, but before that happened, we used to include that because we believe a home inspection is so important to the home buying process. All right? When the market was going crazy, I understand why people weren't doing it, but it still wasn't a reason. There's still ways around it, which I've talked about in other vlogs. But you wouldn't buy a car without taking it for a test drive or getting your mechanic to take a look at it. And whereas you're buying an asset 10 times more expensive, I just feel people are so nonchalant in buying a property without getting an inspection. An inspection is only a few $100s, and in the grand scheme of things, it's a drop in the bucket of what you're paying. However, it can save you a lot of heartache. Now, in my 13 years, in my over 250 deals, we've only walked away from probably 3 deals where the inspection just showed us so many different problems that it was just a can of worms my clients didn't want to deal with. But the issue isn't about knowing what's wrong with it just so you can walk away or not. It's about being educated and understanding what you're buying into. The home inspector is not going to tell you something's good or bad. They're going to tell you problems that you should keep your eye on, something that you should fix before the problem gets any worse, a whole bunch of stuff. So it's just to educate yourself on buying this property. All right, so a lot of people kind of say, oh, the roof's not falling apart, everything else is good, I can buy it. But the home inspector is going to be able to kind of keep an eye on things and give you some pointers that you otherwise wouldn't have seen. If you're a contractor or you have a family member that's a contractor and you feel confident, go for it. But at the end of the day, I really recommend you get a home inspector, take a look at the house and give you their expert opinion as to the shape and condition of that property. It just saves you a lot of headache down the road. All right, so those are the top 3 biggest mistakes I realize a lot of people are making. Some extra ones I've noticed is people being too picky and not picky enough. And what I mean by that is this. When we start the home buying process, when the first time I meet with my clients, after they've got their mortgage pre-approval, we've got their price point in mind, I ask them, I say, what are your 3 non-negotiables? And what I mean by 3 non-negotiables is, what are 3 things that you're not willing to budge off of, okay? It doesn't matter how perfect the home is, if it doesn't have one of these 3 things, you're not gonna consider it. These are things I always recommend that you cannot change. So area, proximity to a certain school, lot size, number of bedrooms, things like that. Then when it comes to being too picky, I always focus on the things that you can change. If somebody says, oh, that house doesn't have granite countertop, I don't like it. Well, price that in and you could eventually change it and add the granite countertop, right? You can paint the house. You can change some different aspects of the property. So don't let that be your deal breakers. The deal breakers should be things that you cannot change or that you can't budget for. All right. So again, hopefully this has been helpful. I completely understand it's a very stressful process. It's probably the biggest purchase you're ever going to make in your entire life. So you want to make sure that you've got an agent that can guide you through the entire process. So if you are looking at buying a home in the Durham region, never hesitate to reach out to us. We're always here to help. If you'd like a consultation or just talk and ask some questions, never hesitate to reach out. Jacob at SoldByJacob.com. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Have a good one.